The crackling sound wasn't from our campfire. It came from somewhere deeper in the woods, a rhythmic snap-snap that seemed to circle our campsite. When I shined my flashlight toward the noise, there was nothing there. But the moment I turned it off, the sound would continue, always closer than before. I never believed in ghost stories or campfire tales until last summer when my friends and I decided to spend a week camping at Blackwood Forest. There were 5 of us, me, Jacob, Mia, Ryan, and Emma, all college friends looking for one last adventure before starting our careers in different cities. We'd been planning this trip for months, researching the best camping spots, trails with spectacular views, and local legends to spook each other around the campfire. Blackwood Forest seemed perfect, remote enough to feel like a true wilderness experience, but still accessible with decent cell service at certain spots. The online reviews mentioned its breathtaking scenery, crystal clear lake, and abundant wildlife. What they didn't mention were the whispers at night. Our campsite was nestled in a small clearing surrounded by towering pine trees. The moment we arrived, I felt something off about the place. While my friends excitedly unpacked our gear and set up tents, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The forest seemed too quiet, no bird song, no rustling of small animals in the underbrush, just an oppressive silence that made the hair on my arms stand up. But I brushed it off as pre-camping jitters and focused on helping set up our temporary home. The first day passed uneventfully. We hiked a nearby trail, took photos at a scenic overlook, and swam in the lake. As evening approached, we gathered around our campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. Jacob, always the prankster, insisted on telling local legends about Blackwood Forest, stories of hikers who ventured off trail and were never seen again, of strange lights that appeared between the trees at night, of whispers that called people deeper into the woods. We laughed it off as typical campfire fare, but I noticed Ryan looking uncomfortably toward the darkened tree line. "Did you guys hear that?" he asked suddenly, cutting off Jacob mid-story. We all fell silent, straining to hear whatever had caught Ryan's attention. At first, there was nothing, but then I heard it to a faint whispering sound, like someone talking just below the threshold of hearing. It seemed to come from all directions at once, impossible to pinpoint. "It's just the wind in the trees," Mia suggested, but her voice lacked conviction. There was no wind that night. The air was completely still. The whispering faded after a few moments, and we tried to recapture our cheerful mood, but something had shifted. We turned in earlier than planned, retreating to our tents with promises to explore more trails tomorrow. I shared a tent with Emma, while the others each had their own. As I drifted toward sleep, I heard Emma whisper, "Do you smell that?" I sniffed the air and caught a strange, acrid scent, like something burning but not wood or leaves, something chemical and unnatural. "Probably just remnants from the campfire," I whispered back, pulling my sleeping bag closer around me despite the warm night. I woke suddenly in the darkest part of night, my heart racing though I couldn't remember any dream. The tent was empty beside me. Emma's sleeping bag was unzipped and abandoned. I checked my phone. 3:17 a.m. Concern immediately flooded through me. Had she just gone to use the bathroom? But something felt wrong. I unzipped our tent and stepped out into the moonlit clearing. The campfire had died down to faintly glowing embers that cast barely any light. The air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't identify. I called Emma's name softly, not wanting to wake the others if this was nothing. No response. I grabbed my flashlight and swept its beam around the campsite. The other tent seemed undisturbed. As I turned toward the trees, my light caught something that made my blood run cold. A single set of footprints leading from our tent into the forest. They weren't shaped quite right, somehow longer and narrower than Emma's feet should have made. Reluctantly, I followed the trail to the edge of the clearing, calling Emma's name a little louder now. The footprints continued between two massive pines, heading straight into the darkest part of the forest. I hesitated, torn between waking the others and following immediately. That's when I heard her laugh, distant but unmistakably Emma's, coming from somewhere deep among the trees. But the sound was off somehow, like listening to a recording played at slightly the wrong speed. "Emma?" I called again, louder this time. "This isn't funny." My voice echoed strangely, seeming to bounce back from much closer than it should have. Then I heard the crackling sound for the first time, snap, snap, rhythmic and deliberate, moving through the underbrush about 20 yards to my right. My flashlight beam trembled as I pointed it in that direction, revealing nothing but dense forest. I retreated to the campsite and urgently shook Jacob awake. Then Ryan and Mia. Their confusion quickly turned to concern as I explained Emma's absence and the strange footprints. Jacob immediately took charge, directing us to grab our flashlights and form a search party. As we prepared to head into the woods, we heard Emma's voice again, this time singing a childhood song I'd never heard her sing before. It came from a completely different direction than the laugh I'd heard earlier. "This way," Jacob pointed, leading us toward the sound. We'd barely taken 10 steps when Ryan grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. "Look," he whispered, pointing to the ground. My flashlight revealed not one but dozens of footprint trails now, all leading in different directions into the forest. Some looked human, others decidedly not, and none of them had been there minutes earlier when I'd followed the single trail. "We need to call for help," Mia said, already pulling out her phone. The screen illuminated her increasingly panicked expression. No signal. "There was signal earlier today," Ryan insisted, checking his own phone. "How can there be nothing now?" That's when we heard Emma scream, a sound of pure terror that ripped through the night. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. We froze, looking at each other in horror. The scream cut off abruptly, followed by the snap, snap, snap sound, now circling our campsite just beyond the tree line, faster and faster. "We need to stay together," Jacob said firmly, though I could hear the fear in his voice. "Whatever happens, don't separate." We stood back to back in the center of the clearing, flashlights pointed outward like weapons. Minutes passed in tense silence. The snapping sound eventually slowed, then stopped. Just as our breathing began to normalize, Emma emerged from the forest directly in front of me. Relief flooded through me until I saw her face expressionless, eyes vacant, moving with a stiff, unnatural gait. She stopped at the edge of the clearing, swaying slightly. "Emma?" I called cautiously. "Are you okay?" Her head tilted at an impossible angle, neck bending farther than humanly possible. When she spoke, her voice sounded wrong, layered, as if multiple voices were speaking through her. "I found something in the woods," she said. "You all need to see it." An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. Every instinct screamed that this was not Emma, not really. Whatever stood before us wearing her face was something else entirely. "What did you find?" Jacob asked, his voice steady despite the situation. Emma's face split into a smile too wide for her features. "An old campsite with markers, names carved into the trees." Her head straightened with a sickening crack. "Your names." Ryan broke first, backing away and nearly tripping over the remnants of our campfire. "This isn't happening," he muttered. "This can't be real." Emma's attention snapped to him, movements jerky like a puppet on strings. "Don't you want to see, Ryan? It's just a little walk into the trees." She extended her hand, fingers bent at odd angles. "I can show you the way." The snap, snap, snap returned, louder than before, coming from directly behind Emma. Multiple shadows moved in the darkness beyond her, just outside the reach of our flashlights. "We're not going anywhere," I said firmly, trying to mask my terror. "Emma, if you're in there, fight this." Come back to us. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, fear, a silent plea for help. Then it was gone, replaced by that empty stare. They're ancient, these woods, she said, voice dropping to a whisper. They remember everything. Everyone who enters, everyone who never leaves. She took a step forward, and they're so hungry now. I awoke with a jolt, gasping for breath, my sleeping bag soaked with sweat. Sunlight filtered through the tent fabric, and I could hear birds chirping. Outside, Emma stirred beside me, mumbling in her sleep. I stared at her, relief and confusion washing over me in equal measure. Had it all been a nightmare? Bad dream? Emma asked, yawning as she sat up. You were thrashing around all night. I nodded, unable to shake the lingering dread. Just a stupid nightmare. It felt so real, though. Emma smiled sympathetically. Jacob's ghost stories probably didn't help. Want to get breakfast started? I'm starving. Outside, the morning was bright and clear, the forest alive with natural sounds. Jacob and Mia were already up, boiling water for coffee on our portable stove. Ryan emerged from his tent moments later, looking as tired as I felt. Everyone sleep okay? Jacob asked, passing me a steaming mug. Before I could answer, Ryan cut in. Did anyone else hear weird noises last night, like a snapping sound? My mug nearly slipped from my fingers. What kind of snapping? Like footsteps in the underbrush, Ryan said, looking troubled. And I could have sworn someone was whispering my name. Jacob laughed. Man, my stories really got to you guys, huh? It was probably just raccoons or something. I wanted to believe him. But when I walked to the edge of our clearing to brush my teeth, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. A single set of elongated footprints leading from our tent into the forest. Exactly like in my dream. And beside one of the prints was a small object I didn't recognize at first. Bending down, I realized it was a friendship bracelet. The one Emma had been wearing yesterday, that it wasn't there now. When I looked up, I saw carvings on the nearest tree. That definitely hadn't been there the day before. 5 names etched into the bark, including mine, the letters still oozing sap as if freshly cut. The second day of our camping trip passed in a haze of unease that I couldn't shake. I didn't tell the others about the footprints or the carving. They would either think I was playing a prank or worse, that I was losing my mind. Instead, I kept a close eye on Emma, watching for any signs that something was off. She seemed perfectly normal, enthusiastically leading us on a hike to a waterfall mentioned in our guidebook. Yet occasionally, I'd catch her staring blankly into the forest, and when I'd ask what she was looking at, she'd blink as if coming out of a trance and claim it was nothing. The waterfall itself was beautiful. A 30-foot cascade tumbling into a clear pool perfect for swimming. While the others changed into swimsuits, I examined our surroundings more carefully. That's when I spotted another tree with carvings, this one partially hidden behind a boulder. It wasn't our names this time, but a series of strange symbols that looked ancient, unlike anything I recognized. Below the symbols was a date. Today's date, but from exactly 1 year ago. Hey guys, I called. Come look at this. Jacob reached me first. Someone's idea of art? He suggested, running his fingers over the symbols. Check out the date. I pointed. He frowned. Weird coincidence. What's a coincidence? Mia asked, joining us in her swimsuit. Before Jacob could answer, Ryan called out from the pool. Guys, you have to see this. We turned to find him standing waist-deep in the water, pointing at something beneath the surface. Wading in carefully, we gathered around him. At the bottom of the pool, partially buried in silt, was what appeared to be a collection of old camping gear, a rusted mess kit, the decayed remains of a backpack, and most disturbing, what looked Like a waterproof camera. Jacob immediately dove down and retrieved the camera. It's one of those waterproof disposables, he said, examining it. The kind tourists use, and it doesn't look that old. We should turn it into the ranger station, Emma suggested. Someone might be looking for it. Jacob nodded, tucking it into his pocket. We'll drop it off on the way out in a few days. I couldn't help but feel there was something important about the camera, but the others were already splashing and swimming. The strange find quickly forgotten in the joy of the moment. All except Ryan, who kept glancing toward the forest instead of joining in. Later that evening, as we sat around our campfire, Jacob suddenly remembered the camera. Anyone curious what's on this thing? He asked, pulling it from his pocket. You can't just go through someone's photos, Mia protested. I'm not publishing them online, Jacob countered. I'm just curious if there's anything that might tell us who it belongs to. Besides, who uses disposable cameras anymore? This thing could be ancient. Despite Mia's objections, Jacob carefully opened the back of the camera. The film inside was intact, but exposed now to the firelight. Well, that's that, he sighed. Sorry, folks, Detective Jacob just destroyed the evidence. But as he was about to toss the empty camera into our trash bag, Emma stopped him. Wait, there's something else in there. Jacob turned the camera over and a small piece of folded paper fell out. He carefully unfolded it, revealing a hand-drawn map of Blackwood Forest. Our current campsite was marked with an X, and so was the waterfall we'd visited earlier. But there was a third X as well, in a part of the forest we hadn't explored yet, with a note scrawled beside it. Don't go after dark. Well, that's not ominous at all, Ryan said sarcastically, but I could hear the nervousness in his voice. It's probably just marking the good camping spots, Jacob suggested. The don't go after dark could be about dangerous terrain, not suitable for night hiking. Or it could be another camper's idea of a joke, Mia added. I wasn't convinced. Doesn't it seem strange that we found this map that just happens to mark our exact campsite? And the waterfall we just visited today? Emma studied the map more closely. What's this third spot marked here? Anyone know? Jacob pulled out his phone and compared it with our downloaded trail map. Looks like some kind of landmark called Whispering Rocks, about 3 miles northeast of us. The name sent a chill down my spine, remembering the whispers from my nightmare. I was about to suggest we avoid that area entirely when a twig snapped loudly in the darkness beyond our campfire. We all turned toward the sound. Jacob grabbed his flashlight and pointed it into the trees, but the beam didn't penetrate far into the dense forest. Probably just a deer, he said, though he didn't sound convinced. That's when we heard it, the snap-snap from my nightmare, circling our campsite just beyond the light of our fire. My heart began to race as I shared a panicked look with Ryan, who clearly recognized the sound too. Jacob, I said quietly, we need to put out the fire and get in our tents. Now. What? Why? It's just some animal, he protested. Please, I insisted. Trust me on this. Something in my voice must have convinced him because he nodded and began dousing the fire while the rest of us quickly gathered our things. As the flames died down and darkness enveloped us, the snapping sound stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was somehow worse. We retreated to our tents, and I found myself again sharing with Emma, both of us lying awake in the darkness, listening. After what seemed like hours, Emma finally spoke. I've been having strange dreams since we got here, she whispered. About the forest, about something calling me into the trees. My blood ran cold. What kind of dreams? There's an old campsite, she said softly, with names carved into the trees. I keep dreaming I find it at night, and there's something there waiting for me. It took every ounce of self-control not to gasp. Instead, I reached for her hand in the darkness. It's just dreams. Emma, that maybe we should leave tomorrow, head home early. She squeezed my hand back. Maybe you're right. Eventually, Emma's breathing slowed as she drifted off to sleep. I lay awake much longer, jumping at every small sound from the forest. When I finally did fall asleep, I dreamed of whispering rocks and a circle of ancient stones covered in the same strange symbols I'd seen carved into the tree. I awoke before dawn, immediately aware that something was wrong. The air in the tent felt different, charged with the same strange energy I'd felt in my nightmare. Beside me, Emma's sleeping bag was empty again. Panic surged through me as I scrambled out of the tent, not bothering with shoes or a jacket despite the pre-dawn chill. The campsite was shrouded in mist, the other tents mere shadows in the dim light. I was about to call out for Emma when I spotted her standing at the edge of the clearing, facing the forest. She was perfectly still, wearing only her pajamas, her feet bare on the cold ground. "Emma?" I whispered, approaching her cautiously. She didn't respond or give any indication she'd heard me. As I drew closer, I could see her eyes were open but vacant, staring fixedly at something among the trees that I couldn't see. "Emma," I tried again, gently touching her shoulder. She turned her head slowly, mechanically, to look at me. For a terrifying moment, I thought I'd see the same wrong expression from my nightmare, but instead, her eyes gradually focused and confusion spread across her face. "Why are we outside?" she asked, shivering suddenly as awareness returned. "You were sleepwalking," I explained, putting an arm around her and guiding her back toward our tent. "Do you remember anything? Any dreams?" She frowned, concentrating. I heard someone calling my name, a voice I recognized but couldn't place. It said it needed help. As we reached our tent, I noticed something clutched in Emma's hand, a small stone covered in the same strange symbols from the tree by the waterfall. When I pointed it out, she looked as surprised as I felt. "I don't remember picking this up," she said, turning it over in her palm. As she did, I noticed a dark stain on her hand. In the strengthening dawnlight, I could see it was dirt mixed with something that looked disturbingly like blood. Before I could ask about it, Jacob emerged from his tent, yawning. "Morning, early birds. Everything okay?" I exchanged a look with Emma, silently agreeing to keep this between us for now. "Just watching the sunrise," I lied. "Going to start coffee soon." As Jacob headed to the portable bathroom we'd set up, Emma whispered urgently, "I think we need to find whispering rocks." "Rocks? What? No way," I protested. The map specifically warned against it. "I know, but ... she hesitated. "In my dream, that's where the voice was calling from. Someone's in trouble there, I'm sure of it." I studied her face, searching for any sign that something other than Emma was looking back at me. But all I saw was concern and determination in her eyes. "We should at least tell the others," I suggested. She nodded reluctantly. "After breakfast. But I'm going today, with or without everyone else." As the morning progressed and we shared a tense breakfast, I noticed Ryan seemed increasingly agitated, constantly glancing toward the forest. When Emma finally brought up her plan to hike to Whispering Rocks, his reaction surprised us all. I've been thinking the same thing," he admitted. "I found this in my sleeping bag this morning." He pulled out another small stone with identical markings to Emma's. I have no idea how it got there. Jacob and Mia exchanged worried glances. "This is getting weird, guys," Mia said. "Maybe we should just pack up and go home after we check out Whispering Rocks," Emma insisted. "It'll only take a few hours, and then we can leave if everyone still wants to." Reluctantly, everyone agreed to the plan. We packed day bags with water, snacks, and first aid supplies, making sure our phone batteries were charged, even though the signal had been spotty at best. As we prepared to leave, I noticed the symbols on both stones had begun to look almost like they were moving when viewed from the corner of my eye, shifting and rearranging themselves when not directly observed. The hike to Whispering Rocks was tense and mostly silent. We followed Jacob, who navigated using both our trail map and the mysterious hand-drawn one. The forest seemed different today, the usual woodland sounds muffled and distant. The air thick with moisture that wasn't quite fog, but reduced visibility nonetheless. Twice we had to backtrack after the trail seemed to shift direction unexpectedly. "This doesn't make sense," Jacob muttered after the second detour. "According to both maps, we should be heading northeast, but the trail keeps curving northwest." "Maybe the map is wrong," Mia suggested. "Or maybe the forest doesn't want us to find it," Ryan said quietly. I would have dismissed his comment as paranoia just days ago, but now it didn't seem so far-fetched. After nearly 3 hours of hiking, much longer than the journey should have taken, the trees finally thinned, revealing a small clearing surrounded by a semicircle of tall, weathered stones. The rocks were arranged in an uneven circle, each one covered in the same strange symbols we'd found on the stones and tree carvings. In the center of the circle was a flat stone that looked disturbingly like an altar. We approached cautiously, none of us speaking. The air within the circle felt different, heavier, charged with something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. As we reached the edge of the stone circle, Emma suddenly gasped and pointed. "Look," she whispered. On the far side of the circle, partially hidden behind one of the larger stones, was a tent, old and weather-beaten, but clearly not abandoned long ago. Beside it was a small, long cold fire pit and a backpack leaning against a tree. Jacob approached the tent first, calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" When no response came, he cautiously unzipped the tent flap and peered inside. "Empty," he reported. "But it looks like someone left in a hurry. There's still a sleeping bag and some personal items." I joined him, looking into the abandoned tent. The sleeping bag was unzipped, clothes scattered around as if someone had changed in a panic. A journal lay open on top of a small pillow, and, without thinking, I picked it up. The journal belonged to someone named Michael, and the last entry was dated exactly 1 year ago. The same date carved into the tree by the waterfall. As I skimmed the final pages, my blood ran cold. Michael described finding strange stones with symbols, hearing whispers in the night, and most disturbing of all, seeing his own name carved into a tree by the waterfall. The final entry was hurried, the handwriting increasingly frantic. "They're coming through now. The stones are just doorways. They've been watching us, learning our names, our faces. They can look like us, sound like us. If you're reading this, get out. They only need one more to complete the circle. Don't trust anyone who acts strange, especially at night. They're not who they appear to be." I looked up from the journal to find the others exploring the campsite. Emma and Ryan were examining the stones, tracing the symbols with their fingers. Jacob was looking through the backpack, while Mia stood slightly apart, arms crossed, clearly uncomfortable. "Guys," I called, my voice shaking slightly. "I think we need to leave. Now." I held up the journal, about to explain what I'd read, when a sound stopped me, the same snap-snap from my nightmare and the previous night, coming from the forest beyond the stone circle. We all froze, looking toward the source of the noise. A figure emerged from between the trees, a hiker, a man in his early 30s with a weathered face and friendly smile. He walked directly into the circle, nodding at us in greeting. "Fellow campers," he said cheerfully. "Don't get many visitors to this spot. It's a bit off the beaten path." Something about him immediately set off alarm bells in my mind. His movements were too smooth, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. When he spoke, there was an almost imperceptible delay between his words and the movement of his lips. We're just exploring," Jacob explained, clearly not sensing anything amiss. Found this old campsite and were wondering what happened to the camper. The man's smile widened slightly. Oh, he moved on. Most people don't stay long at whispering rocks. He extended his hand to Jacob. I'm Michael, by the way. I'm the park ranger for this section. My heart nearly stopped. Michael, the same name as in the journal. I caught Emma's eye, silently trying to convey my suspicion. She gave a nearly imperceptible nod, having made the connection as well. Jacob shook the man's hand, introducing himself and then gesturing to each of us in turn. As Michael turned to look at me, I saw something shift behind his eyes, something ancient and hungry that had nothing to do with humanity. We should probably head back, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's getting late, and we want to reach camp before dark. Michael's head tilted slightly, the movement too fluid to be natural. But you've only just arrived. Don't you want to learn about the history of these stones? They're quite fascinating. Maybe another time, Emma said, beginning to edge toward the trail. Michael stepped into her path, still smiling that empty smile. The stones have been waiting for you, all of you, for a very long time. Ryan suddenly gasped, pointing at Michael's feet. Where there should have been hiking boots were instead elongated, inhuman appendages, partially obscured by a glamour that flickered like bad television reception. Run! I shouted, grabbing Emma's hand and pulling her toward the trail. We all broke into a sprint, not looking back even as we heard that awful snap-snap sound pursuing us, faster than any human could move through the dense forest. The trail seemed to shift and change before our eyes, trees appearing where none had been before, forcing us to weave and change direction constantly. Stay together. Jacob yelled as we ran, but the forest seemed determined to separate us. A thick fog rolled in with unnatural speed, reducing visibility to mere feet. I held onto Emma's hand like a lifeline, hearing the panicked breathing of Jacob and Mia somewhere nearby. But Ryan had already disappeared from view. Ryan! I called out, receiving no answer but the echo of my own voice and that terrible snapping sound now coming from multiple directions at once. The forest had become a maze, and we were the prey being herded through it. As the fog thickened further, I lost my grip on Emma's hand. I spun around, calling her name, but there was no response. Within seconds, I could no longer hear Jacob or Mia either. I was alone in the white mist, with nothing but the snap, snap, snap. Drawing ever closer, I ran blindly, branches scratching my face and arms, roots threatening to trip me with every step. The journal's warning echoed in my mind. They can look like us, sound like us. I couldn't trust anyone I encountered now, not even my friends. After what seemed like hours but could have been minutes, I burst through the tree line into a clearing hour. Campsite. But something was wrong. The tents were arranged differently, the fire pit in the wrong location, and carved into every tree surrounding the clearing were our names, repeated over and over in a manic scrawl. As I stood there panting, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, footsteps approached from behind me. I turned slowly, expecting to see the thing that called itself Michael. Instead, it was Emma, her clothes torn, face scratched from branches, eyes wide with fear. Oh, thank God, she gasped, moving to embrace me. I stepped back, remembering to. Warning, stop. How do I know you're really Emma? She looked hurt, confused. What are you talking about? Of course, it's me. Tell me something only Emma would know, I demanded, watching her face carefully. She thought for a moment. On our first day of college, you tripped going up the stairs to the dorm and spilled coffee all over my white shoes. But I didn't get mad because I was so nervous about meeting new people that I'd thrown up in the bathroom 10 minutes earlier. It sounded right, sounded like a real memory. The doubt still gnawed at me. Where did you grow up? Springfield, Massachusetts, she answered immediately. in the blue house on Maple Street with the crooked mailbox my dad never fixed. Again, it sounded correct, aligned with everything I knew about Emma, but something still felt off. A subtle wrongness I couldn't identify. "What's happening to us?" I asked, not moving closer. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know, but we need to find the others and get out of here." She pointed to the campsite. "This isn't our camp. I think we're seeing echoes of what happened to Michael and whoever was with him." Before I could respond, we heard voices calling our names, Jacob and Mia emerging from the forest on the opposite side of the clearing. They looked as battered as we did, clearly having fought their way through the same maze. "Where's Ryan?" Jacob asked immediately. We all looked at each other, the terrible truth sinking in. Ryan was still out there, somewhere in the forest. "We have to find him," Mia insisted. "No," I said firmly. "We need to get help. Real help." I pulled out my phone, unsurprised to find no signal. We grab our real gear from our real campsite, and we hike out to the ranger station. "Tonight." "We can't leave Ryan," Emma protested. I met her gaze steadily. "The best way to help Ryan is to bring back professional search and rescue. We're not equipped for this." After a tense debate, we agreed on the plan. Using both maps and Jacob's compass, we managed to find our way back to our actual campsite as dusk approached. Everything was exactly as we'd left it, with no sign that Ryan had returned. We packed quickly, taking only what we needed for the hike-out. As Jacob doused our campfire one final time, Emma approached me, speaking low so the others couldn't hear. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her expression troubled. "When we were separated in the fog, I saw something." Ryan was there, talking to ... himself. Two Ryans, identical, standing face to face. And then one of them ... changed. Just for a second. But what I saw, she shuddered. It wasn't human. A chill ran down my spine. "Which one?" "The one that changed. Did it stay in the forest or come with Ryan?" "I don't know," she admitted. The fog closed in again before I could see. But I'm scared that whatever came back with us ... might not be Ryan anymore. Or might not be one of us. As we shouldered our packs and prepared to hike out in the fading light, that familiar snap-snap sound echoed from the darkening forest all around us. But this time, it was accompanied by a voice, Ryan's voice, calling for help from somewhere, deep among the trees. And then another voice joined it, also Ryan's, but coming from the opposite direction. "Don't listen," Jacob warned, his face pale. "We stick to the plan. Out to the ranger station." As we set off down the trail, flashlights illuminating the path ahead, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched by countless eyes from the darkness between the trees. And I wondered, even if we made it out, would we ever truly escape what we'd encountered at Whispering Rocks? Or would it follow us, wearing familiar faces, speaking with familiar voices, waiting for the moment? We let our guard down? Behind us, the snap-snap grew louder, more insistent, coming from all directions at once. And somewhere in the forest, something that sounded exactly like Ryan continued to call our names, begging us not to leave him behind. The following hours were the longest of my life. We hiked through the night, following the main trail that would eventually lead us to the ranger station at the edge of Blackwood Forest. Every shadow seemed to move on its own. Every natural sound of the forest twisted into something menacing. We barely spoke, conserving our energy and staying alert for any sign of pursuit. Jacob took the lead, map and compass in hand, while Mia and Emma walked in the middle. I took the rear position, constantly looking back over my shoulder, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The voices that sounded like Ryan had faded once we put some distance between ourselves and the campsite, but occasionally I'd still hear that snap-snap in the underbrush just off the trail around midnight. We stopped briefly to rest and drink water. Emma sat close beside me, her shoulders tense, eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. "Do you think Ryan is still alive?" she whispered. I wanted to offer reassurance, but couldn't bring myself to lie. "I don't know. I hope so." We reached the ranger station just as dawn was breaking. The building was dark, but a truck was parked outside, giving us hope that someone was there. Jacob pounded on the door, calling for help. After several tense moments, a light flickered on inside, and the door opened to reveal an older man in a ranger uniform, his expression shifting from annoyance to concern as he took in our bedraggled appearance. "What happened to you folks?" he asked, ushering us inside. That we took turns explaining our experience, trying to stick to the facts without sounding completely insane. We mentioned our missing friend, the abandoned campsite, and the strange occurrences, though we left out the more supernatural elements of our story. The ranger, whose name badge identified him as Peterson, listened with increasing gravity. When we finished, he was silent for a long moment before speaking. "You're not the first campers to go missing around Whispering Rocks," he finally said. "We've had incidents over the years. That area is actually off limits to campers, though the signs have a way of disappearing. Our friend is still out there," Mia insisted. "We need a search party." Ranger Peterson nodded grimly. "I'll radio for backup and we'll organize a search. But I need to be honest with you. If your friend has been missing in those woods overnight, the chances of finding him..." He didn't finish the sentence. While we waited for the search team to assemble, Emma pulled me aside. "There's something not right about this place," she whispered. "Did you notice there are no photos on the walls? No personal touches at all?" I looked around, realizing she was right. The ranger station was strangely sterile, with none of the personality one would expect in a workplace. "And the ranger," she continued, her voice dropping even lower. "He hasn't asked us any of the standard questions: our names, contact information, details about where exactly we were camping." A prickle of unease ran down my spine. "You think? I don't know what to think anymore." She cut me off. "But I don't want to stay here any longer than we have to." As if on cue, Ranger Peterson returned, now accompanied by 2 more men in identical uniforms. "Search team's ready," he announced. "We'll head out immediately." "We're coming with you," Jacob stated, not a question. Peterson smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. "Of course. We'll need you to show us exactly where you were." As we prepared to head back into the forest, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A small stone on Peterson's desk, partially hidden under papers, bearing the same strange symbols we'd found by the waterfall and at Whispering Rocks. The 3 rangers led us to a large SUV with official markings. As I climbed into the back seat, my hand brushed against something sticky on the door handle. In the dim light, it looked disturbingly like dried blood. Emma, seated beside me, squeezed my hand in silent communication. We were both thinking the same thing. We'd escaped the forest only to walk straight into another trap. The SUV pulled away from the ranger station, heading not toward the main trail as expected, but down a narrow dirt road that plunged deeper into Blackwood Forest. "This isn't the way to our campsite," Jacob said from the front passenger seat, tension evident in his voice. "Shortcut," Peterson replied without elaboration. Trees grew thicker around us, branches scraping the sides of the vehicle as the road narrowed further. Mia, on my other side, was trembling slightly. I leaned forward, trying to see where we were heading, when something caught my eye: the rear-view mirror, angled so I could see Peterson's reflection. For just a moment, his face seemed to shift, features becoming fluid before settling back into human form. That's when I knew with absolute certainty that we hadn't escaped at all. Whatever dwelled in Blackwood Forest had been playing with us all along, hurting us exactly where it wanted us to go. As the SUV rounded a bend, a familiar clearing came into view: Whispering Rocks, the ancient stones now gleaming in the morning sunlight. But something was different. The circle was no longer incomplete. A new stone had been added, and tied to it was Ryan, his eyes wide with terror, mouth gagged to prevent him from warning us. The vehicle stopped, and Peterson turned to face us, his smile now impossibly wide. "Welcome back," he said, his voice layered with others beneath it. "Now we can begin properly." "Begin what?" Jacob demanded, though I think we all knew the answer. "The joining," not Peterson replied. "Your friend here was most cooperative in bringing you back to us. Or should I say, what's left of your friend?" As if on cue, Ryan's body slumped against the stone, the light in his eyes dimming as something else took control. Something ancient and hungry that had been waiting in these woods for countless years. 5 souls to complete the circle. The thing wearing Peterson's face continued. 5 souls to open the door. The other 2, rangers, moved with inhuman speed, grabbing Jacob and Mia before they could react. I lunged for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Emma's hand found mine again, squeezing tight. "Remember the journal," she whispered urgently. "They need all 5 of us willing." Understanding dawned. Whatever ritual they were attempting required our cooperation, or at least our submission, which meant we still had a chance, however slim. "We need to get to the stones," Emma continued, her voice barely audible. "The symbols are a binding. If we can disrupt the circle." I nodded imperceptibly, already calculating the distance to the nearest stone. When not Peterson opened my door and reached for me, I was ready. I kicked out hard, connecting with what should have been his knee, but felt more like dense wood. He staggered back just enough for me to slip past. Dragging Emma with me, we ran for the stone circle, hearing inhuman howls of rage behind us. Jacob and Mia had somehow broken free as well, running in different directions, creating confusion among our pursuers. I reached the nearest stone first, Emma right behind me. The symbols seemed to pulse with their own inner light now, a sickly green glow that hurt my eyes. "What do we do?" I gasped. Emma didn't answer with words. Instead, she picked up a rock and began smashing it against the carved symbols, obliterating them one by one. I immediately followed her lead, attacking the ancient markings with desperate intensity. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The air itself seemed to tear open above the center of the circle, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness that began to pull everything toward it. The creatures that had been pursuing us abandoned their human disguises, revealing forms of twisted wood and shadow that defied description. "Keep going," Emma shouted over the howling wind. "Destroy all the symbols." Jacob and Mia had reached other stones and were doing the same, frantically erasing the ancient carvings that had maintained the circle's power for so long. As the last symbol shattered under my makeshift hammer, the pull of the vortex intensified. The creatures that had tormented us were dragged inexorably toward it, their inhuman screams cutting through the roar of the collapsing doorway. "Hold on to something," I yelled, wrapping my arms around the stone I'd been defacing. The 4 of us clung desperately to the remnants of the circle as everything else was pulled into the void. The creature that had been Peterson, its companions, and finally, the empty shell that had once been Ryan, his body little more than a puppet for whatever had been wearing him. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the vortex collapsed in on itself with a thunderous boom that shook the ground beneath us. The silence that followed was deafening. We picked ourselves up slowly, battered and exhausted, but alive. The stone circle was in ruins, the ancient rocks cracked and broken, their power finally spent. "Is it over?" Mia asked, her voice hoarse. "I think so," Jacob replied, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. We made our way back to the SUV, which surprisingly still functioned. With Jacob driving, we followed the dirt road back to the ranger station, now deserted with no sign anyone had ever been there. From there, we found the main highway and civilization. The authorities never found any trace of Ryan or the real Ranger Peterson, if there ever was one. The official report listed Ryan as a missing hiker, presumed dead from exposure or animal attack. Blackwood Forest was temporarily closed for an environmental assessment, though I suspect it will eventually reopen. Places like that always do. The four of us have tried to move on with our lives, but the experience has marked us in ways that are difficult to explain to others. We stay in touch, checking in regularly, sharing our nightmares and paranoia without judgment. Some nights I still wake up to that snap snap snout, though I've never been able to locate its source. Emma moved in with me after we returned. Neither of us wanted to be alone, and there's comfort in having someone who understands when you need to check behind doors or verify a friend's identity with personal questions. We've developed our own safety protocols, our own language of reassurance. Last week, I found a small stone on our doorstep, smooth and unmarked. It could have been anything, a prank, a coincidence, a token left by a neighborhood child. But we packed our bags that night and moved to a new apartment without telling anyone where we were going. Because the most terrifying thing about Blackwood Forest wasn't what we encountered there, but the uncertainty that followed. The constant question that haunts us every day. Did we truly escape, or did something follow us out? Something patient and ancient that might be watching us even now, wearing a familiar face, biding its time until we let down our guard. Sometimes, while Emma is sleeping, I study her face and wonder if it's really her beside me, or something else that came back from those woods. And sometimes, I catch her looking at me the same way.